It was every it was up, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Victorious Ones podcast, the place where gaming meets comics, meets sports, meets movies, as well as inspiration. Of course, I'm your host, King Von Jr. Of course, you can follow me on social media on Twitter /XF301 King Von Jr. You can follow the show's Twitter page at Victory Pod One. I'm also on Instagram at Mr. King Von Jr. You can follow the show's Instagram page at Victorious Ones Podcast. I'm also the social media producer for Perfect Plex Talk Radio, hosted by none other than friend of the program, Mike Knox. And so, quite a few things, to get into. Of course, um, most importantly, is going to be about my WrestleMania predictions, as well as the long-awaited WrestleMania tier list. I'm gonna rank some of the matches based off of a tier system. Whether it's the S, rankings from S tier, A tier, B tier, so on and so forth. So that's what I'm going to do. But but also one of the things I want, certainly want to get into, congratulations to those that were inducted into, they're going to be inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. This year's class of 2026 was definitely a very deep and competitive class. So inductees, several of them include the likes of the Wu-Tang Clan. So, congratulations to them. You know what I mean? First Battle Hall of Famers, that was a lot. Like I said, and, of course, congratulations to them. Luther Vandross, Sade, Billy Idol, Oasis, and several others, along with Queen Latifah, MC Light, Rick Rubin, as well as the Godfather, at least the grandfather of Afrobeats, a gentleman by the name of Fela Kuti. And so he was already on the ballot before, but now he's officially going in along with many of the other ones. Unfortunately, New Edition did not make the cut. Of course, even though they were, even though they led the fan vote, they cleared the fan vote. But when it came to the committee, they had other plans in mind, and unfortunately, that's happened oftentimes before. But yeah, Muslim, of course. But yeah, like I said before, this was like I said, a highly competitive class, and so congratulations to those who are inductees. And so the contributions speak for themselves. And I know Gene Simmons is definitely crashing out, and rightfully so. I know Gene Simmons crashing out, and I love to see it. Glad to see that can happen to a nicer guy. And also, also we saw that the WNBA draft took place. So congratulations to those who were drafted, and of course some team Flo A. Johnson. And like I say, especially that was my standout when it came to the draft, among many other women who were drafted. Congratulations to you as well. And so of course I saw the Becoming Shawn Michaels documentary. I enjoyed it. It was very fascinating. It was amazing, and definitely peeled back the layers of HBK and it showed a much more vulnerable side of him. It's always lately it's always been that way, but I think it was something about this is that I like how it really went into detail more so of of the way that he's giving back to, and giving back to the next generation. And so, and the thing is, they said that his second run was pretty much it's a foreshadowing of what he would end up doing in NXT as a mentor. And so we saw the behind the scenes of how he went over certain spots and things like that with with Javon Evans, Ethan Page, for example. I like that. And so of course Shawn has said that he likes the second run better than his first run, just because he was in a much better state of mind in his comeback compared to where he was originally. And of course this is the shirt representing first run HBK, my favorite version of him. But just so talk about like his rise, like pretty much the same things that we known about Shawn before. But the main thing that got out of it, I like how I never knew this, but his kids are involved with NXT. His son is, producer, works somewhere behind the scenes or something like that. And his daughter, actually does the hair and makeup. I said, oh, cool. And to see them growing up like that, that's amazing. And I like how they did the pose with their dad at the end. And all those racist troll, all those you know incels and weirdos on the internet. Y'all need to shut up about that. Like making all these jokes about Sean's kids and stuff like that. That's not cool. That is absolutely heinous. You're nothing but losers and weirdos, and you deserve to have no attention at all whatsoever. But other than that, like I said, of course, HBK, phenomenal, and and so like like I said, it just goes to all like I said, just goes into more personal layer of of Shawn Michaels, and just shows the behind the scenes footage and just shows the matches as a further reminder of what made him so great. You know what I mean? And to and for the for for the for those that are NXT, and have been under Sean's wing, they're very appreciative of that. And you could definitely tell, with of course with the way they speak of him, with the matches that they have, and just the delivery in and of itself. NXT has Shawn Michaels' blueprint, his handprint and imprint, whatever, all over it, and it shows, and it just flourishes and thrives. Um, and it's definitely a sight to behold. And like I said, I highly recommend. It's called Becoming Shawn Michaels. It is on Peacock right now. Um, and so that's pretty much it right there. And then of course we're going to go into some of the go home segments of of SmackDown and Raw, and so that see that Pat McAfee's more involved than ever, and it took shots at CM Punk and everything like that. And of course Cody Rhodes, of course was on Pat's show and crashed out, destroyed the set. Got his WWE title back, and it's just like the biggest issue is how this feud has at least 20 years of history behind it, and it's being put to the back burner, all in the name of celebrity, and that is not cool. And so as far as that, however, I will say that like I said, I did like how I did like the build up, for Stephanie and Liv was naturally hilarious. What I mean? Like, and she's become a meme, with her reaction from that fight, the fight with Stephanie Bakir, which end up leaving Kathleen Kelly, injured for right now. You know what I mean? She became a casualty, of that, of that in the aftermath of it. So I was like, yeah, Liv definitely knows how to deliver. And also when it comes to Brock and Obafemi, how Oba stood up to Paul Heyman, and it looked like a superhero. And it's just like I want to see Oba win, but with these go home shows, with the upside that he has, people are saying he could be cooked by Sunday. So I hope that's not the case. You know what I mean? And I was like, he delivered a great promo, amazing promo, but history shows that it's not the best case when it comes to like I said, when it comes to the go home show. And of course when it comes to when it comes to this the EO and Oscar situation, like it goes to show that that the EO is definitely taking the back burner to the Rhea, and I like how they're calling her out on that. And unfortunately, the last minute plan, for EO versus Oscar Mania has been scrapped. Sadly that's the case. But yeah, and so and of course when it comes to CM Punk and Roman Reigns, we saw that so let me slow down. So as far as like I said, when it comes to CM Punk and Roman Reigns, Punk in this go home promo, he actually stands face to face with Roman and apologizes, quote unquote. Um, and he talks about how he felt, how he was jealous of Roman, and how things were handed to him, and all this other type of stuff. And it just also ultimately became a stare down. And Roman just talked about how Sunday, he's gonna make Punk acknowledge him. Okay, whatever. But yeah, so as far as that, not much to write home about. Congratulations to Naomi and Jimmy Uso for on the birth of their son. Of course that news has been confirmed, and so like I said, congratulations on the baby news. And so of course when it comes to my WrestleMania predictions, let me see. And so as far as my night one predictions, I'm going with Jacob Fatu defeating Drew McIntyre, because Drew has already been solidified. He's already certified, as an all-time great. But this would benefit Jacob even more than Drew, to get this W like that. So I got Jacob winning. As far as the women's IC title match, of course, as it pertains to Becky and AJ, Becky's been taking too many L's. So in this instance, Becky's going to take the title, and AJ's not going to stay there forever. And Mike brought up a great point on Monday that AJ, if you take her out, she's really not going to miss that much. It's not like the landscape drastically changes when she's there, whether she's there or not. It's not like she's that much of a difference maker and needle mover. I don't care how much. I don't care what some of the people in the IWC think, but I feel I believe it's so. The game has pretty much passed her by, and there I've mentioned even before, like last week, there have been women who since AJ would absolutely clear her in the ring and on the mic. She's somebody's favorite, but she's not that high up on the all-time great list, if you know what I mean, right? And so there's tiers to this, as I'm going to bring up, with this tier system pretty soon. And if anything, there's levels to this, if you will. For instance, you have those who may like Molly Holly, but Molly's not in the same stratosphere, excuse the expression, as Trish, Lita, certainly not, Charlotte, the rest of them later. What I mean? Like, she's, a personal favorite, somebody who's likable, but someone who's not going to move the needle like that. Not someone who's in really high demand like that. I feel like that, to a certain extent, that's pretty much AJ right there. So Becky's got to clear, got to wipe the ring with her. So I'm going for big time Bex when it comes to the night. When it comes to the night and the Usos versus I Show Speed, Logan Paul, Austin Theory. I might have to go with I might have to go with the night and the Usos, even though I Show Speed's definitely going to be very impressive. And so that he definitely has a large audience, and so he's not going to be afraid to to really make a splash, make a wave. What I mean? And it just so happens that that you have two internet influencers and Austin Theory on the same team, which is funny. Gunther versus Seth Rollins, the ring general versus Seth freaking Rollins, or the architect, wherever he's supposed to be now. How Seth is really toned down. Is got the all black. He's even got rid of the hair dye too. What I mean? So as far as that's concerned, he's definitely taking a much more serious tone when it comes to someone the caliber of Gunther. But with that being said, I have the ring general winning this one, breaking his his 2-year WrestleMania losing streak. So I got the ring general, and just to build him up, especially when it comes time to face Brock Lesnar, which I believe is inevitable. Then we have Bayley and Lyra, along with versus the Bella Twins, Irresistible Forces, Alexa Bliss and Charlotte Flair. I'm going with the Irresistible Forces. I don't see the Bellas winning because they're not going to stay long. and that would definitely be damaging to to the women's tag division. That killed credibility altogether. Liv Morgan, Stephanie Vakir. I'm going with Liv on this one. I mean, Liv has me hooked into this feud anyway. Um, Randall Keith Orton versus Cody Rhodes for the WWE Championship. I have RKO winning this one to capture his 15th championship. So yeah. So of course that's night one, and then night two. I think that's really where they really kick the heat up. So night two, we have the ladder match for the Intercontinental Championship, where we have Penta versus the young OG, the 6'7" kid Javon Evans, of course the legendary luchador Rey Mysterio, Rusev. We have Dragon Lee and JD McBobblehead. The winner of this match, I'm actually going with Javon Evans on this one. Next up, we have Trick Williams versus Sami Zayn. Whoop that Trick, baby! I'm going with Trick to beat up the redheaded homeless guy in Vegas for the U.S. title. So I'm going with Trick on that one. I know Sammy's a fan favorite, but not at Trick's expense. I'm going with Trick Willie on this one. We have Dominic Mysterio versus Demon Balor. I don't know if this would be the time to bring Demon out. I guess because of the Judgment Day's implosion, whatever the case is. I think we'll go with Finn on that one. Next up, we have for the WWE Women's Championship, we have Jade Cargill versus Rhea Ripley. I'm going with Jade. I'm going with Jade all day. You know what I mean? The storm has got to come through in this one, especially with the whirlwind, no pun intended, that Jade has been dealing with on the internet, especially when it comes to these racist trolls and incels and people accusing her of using PEDs. You have Karens like Chelsea Green backstage who just harass her online for no reason other than jealousy. Like I said, you have the likes of Chelsea, Piper, and Nia all playing in her face, and siding with Rhea, and of course, like I said, Rhea doing what she's done, and I believe that she sabotaged, the chance of us having Jade versus Charlotte at WrestleMania. I think all and plus with Rhea not really putting that much effort into this, it just goes to show that she's going out of her way to embarrass Jade, and I can't go for that. I got Jade winning this one. And last but not least, we have the Tribal Chief Roman Reigns versus CM Punk, Charles Manson Punk. I'm going with Roman on this one. Even though recently Punk was also on the All the Smoke podcast. Of course, as a champion promoting WrestleMania, and asking Punk, who's the MJ versus Kobe of WWE. He's saying it was himself and Roman. I don't see it that way. I see somebody brought this up. They said, Roman versus Punk is more like Giannis versus KG, and I can see that. I can see that analogy more so. Austin versus Rock is more so MJ versus Kobe. That's just my estimation. But I see the Tribal Chief, reclaiming, what is rightfully his and becoming a world heavyweight champion. And I think this could lead the way for, Obafemi to really step up. But ultimately, I think the long-term plan of this still optimistic, especially when it comes to being in Saudi next year, Rock versus Roman. But with that being said, like I said, those are my predictions. I think that this Cody versus Orton thing is more of a copy paste of what happened with Cody versus John Cena last year. Except the only difference is you just have different moving parts. So you just replace John Cena with Randy Orton from one ruthless aggression legend to another. You know what I mean? And then instead of having Travis Scott, we have Pat McAfee and Jelly Roll too. Whatever. But yeah, like I said, I have Randall Keith Orton winning his 15th championship, moving past Triple H, and I have the Tribal Chief Roman Reigns, of course, dethroning CM Punk. So those are my predictions, and now it is time to go into my WrestleMania tier system, ranking system. And so this is just just a snippet, if you will. I may put these online also, but yeah, just for the sake of time. And so in terms of the S tier, S tier is the highest tier, even above A. And this ranking is based off of a ranking system in Japan or something. And so for them, the S tier is the highest, then followed by A, and then B, and so on and so forth. Excuse me. So some of my S tier matches, they are, of course, Shawn Michaels versus Undertaker from WrestleMania 25. That is top notch, to perfection. You know what I mean? Like, greatest match of all time. And I like how they talked about it also in Shawn's documentary. And side note, Shawn's daughter was still pissed off at, upset at Taker, for making her dad retire. You know what I mean? So that's long-standing beef right there. But anyway, back to this list. Like I said, Shawn versus Taker from WrestleMania 25. Then we have Bret versus Stone Cold from WrestleMania 13, rightfully so, S tier. We have Steamboat versus Savage versus Steamboat from WrestleMania 3, which was a pioneer, trendsetter when it came to spectacular WrestleMania matches. So that's still on GOAT status, by so many nearly 40 years later. Next up, I also have Rock versus Austin 2 from WrestleMania 17. I mean, the best match of their rivalry. One of the best main events of all time, if not the greatest, really. Then I have Roman versus Cody from WrestleMania 39. Both Roman versus Cody matches, 39 and 40, are S tier in my estimation. Speaking of WrestleMania 39, also Charlotte versus Rhea, by far. Like, there's no doubt about it, and no doubt in my mind at all. TLC 2, I have as S tier also. I have Bianca versus Sasha from WrestleMania 37. I also have, Bianca versus Becky from 38. Might as well throw that out there. I have HBK versus Razor from WrestleMania 10, and it's kind of on the fence when it came to HBK versus Angle from WrestleMania 21. So that's pretty much it when it comes to S tier. I'm pretty sure there are people who are going to have disagreements about that. When it comes to A tier, a little bit more room. A tier, I have HBK versus Taker from WrestleMania 26. Could be S, like on the fence about that. HBK versus Bret from WrestleMania 12, the Iron Man match. Bret versus Owen from WrestleMania 10. Kurt Angle versus Brock Lesnar, WrestleMania 19. The WrestleMania Triple Threat from WrestleMania 20. We all know who's involved in that. Taker versus Triple H from WrestleMania 28, the end of an era. Rock Austin 3 from WrestleMania 19. Kofi versus Daniel Bryan, Kofi Mania from Mania 35. Rock versus Cena from Mania 28 as well. Savage versus Warrior from WrestleMania 7. Taker versus Triple H from Mania 27. The Triple Threat ladder match from WrestleMania 2000. Edge versus Foley from Mania 22. Bianca versus Rhea versus Io from Mania 41. Roman versus Edge versus Daniel Bryan, from WrestleMania 37. Actually, I'm going to move Charlotte versus Sasha versus Becky in the S tier from WrestleMania 32. Because that was far and away the best match of the night. It was leagues better than everything else that night. Roman versus Brock is A tier from WrestleMania 31, along with the cash-in, of course. Bianca versus Asuka from WrestleMania 39, A tier. Trish versus Mickey James from WrestleMania 22. Also, Rock and Roman versus Cody and Seth from night 1 of Mania 40. Next up, I'm going to see, as far as that, of course. Next up in the B tier, I have Taker versus Edge from WrestleMania 24. Taker versus Kane from Mania 14. Taker versus Orton from, from Mania 21. Taker's in here quite a few times, of course. Taker versus Batista from Mania 23. Matter of fact, I might just move that to A tier. Forget about it, whatever. Screw it. I'm move that to A tier. And so we have in B tier, Becky versus Charlotte versus Ronda from Mania 35. I think because of the fact that that Mania was on for so long, and that was the very last match of the night, and so it lost a lot of momentum because of that. Even though it was the second main event, but Kofi Mania was, of course, by far the best one. So that's why this goes in the B tier. HBK versus Cena from Shawn Michaels versus John Cena from WrestleMania 23. Hogan versus Savage from WrestleMania 5. Hogan versus Warrior WrestleMania 6. Hogan versus Rock, of course, WrestleMania 18. All consecutive, basically. Orton versus Rollins from Mania 31. Of course, Bret Hart versus Roddy Piper, WrestleMania 8. Roman versus Punk versus Seth from WrestleMania 41. Of course, Roman versus Brock from WrestleMania 38. Taker versus Triple H from Mania 17. Charlotte versus Asuka from Mania 34. And the Usos versus KO and Sammy from Mania 39, night 1. So that's B tier. As far as the C tier, I have Rock versus Cena 2, for Mania 29. The WrestleMania 1 main event, Hogan and Mr. T versus Piper and Orndorff. That's C tier. I have Hogan versus Andre from Mania 3. Seth versus Triple H from, from Mania, from WrestleMania 33. HBK versus Diesel from WrestleMania 11. Rock Austin 1 from Mania 15. Roman Reigns versus Triple H from Mania 32. The Fatal 4-Way from WrestleMania 2000. HBK versus Austin. Actually, you know what? Let me see. Oh, you know what? Of course, also for A tier, I had to put HBK versus Jericho, from WrestleMania 19 as well. So that's another A tier match for Mania 19. So there you go. But yeah, like I said, HBK versus Austin from WrestleMania 14 in the C list. Batista versus Cena, WrestleMania 26 C list. Savage versus Flair from WrestleMania 8 could have been better, but whatever. I digress. To put that in B. But Charlotte versus Tiff from Mania 41. Actually, I might put Savage and Flair in B. Then in terms of D list, I have Roman versus Brock from Mania 34. Of course, I have Randy Orton versus Triple H from Mania 25, just because it was on last and the crowd was worn out. Taker versus Sid from Mania 13. Hogan versus Slaughter from WrestleMania 7. And then when it comes to F tier, I mean, might as well just put WrestleMania 9 in of itself. Like those matches speak for themselves. But yeah, like I said, those are the matches from WrestleMania tier list. And so yeah, this pretty much in of itself. All right, going over some of the go home the events for the go home show, for going into Mania 42, excuse me. But yeah, it's pretty much it in and of itself. I know it's kind of a truncated show, but yeah, if anything, and the reason why some of the some of the rankings are the way that they are is is just because when you look at the historical and cultural significance of certain matches over others, I firmly believe, and also match quality as well, build up, storyline, all those things I think are the main things that really factor into this. So yeah, so like I said, that there's some that were just tougher to rank compared to others. But when it comes to the S tier, that's more the upper echelon, like super duper, like top of the line, matches that just really transcend WrestleMania, except WrestleMania in and of itself. And so that's why it's just like S tier is really elite, the most elite of elite category. And so I think that it speaks volumes to the greatness of the likes of Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker. For them to be in these rankings like this, especially HBK. Also like when it comes to the greatness of Roman Reigns, in terms of all those main events that he's had. Now he's on his 11th main event now. You know what I mean? And so that's a testament to his greatness. And for CM Punk to say what he said about Roman's, Mania record, that's ridiculous. You know what I mean? So if anything, Roman has had more home runs in WrestleMania than CM Punk could ever dream of. So if anything, that's that's the way I see it. Anybody else who has any disagreements, it's just like whatever. I mean, I stand 10 toes down on it, and and so in term, I think next week, even when I do my predictions, or not my predictions, but my review of of course, of course, of WrestleMania. I'm gonna, I'm even gonna do my own listing of Roman's, greatest, Mania matches. And also another thing before I go, also got a chance to see a Super Mario Galaxy. Like I said, it was really fun. It was a lot of fan service, a lot of Easter eggs and tributes and things like that. And Star Fox to me was the MVP of that movie, him and Yoshi. And I meant to throw that in there when it came to the pop culture news before I got into wrestling. But yeah, like I said, those are my predictions, and that's my tier list. And so yeah, so of course before I go, I would like to get into when it comes to these birthdays. And hang on with me for a minute. Right there. All right. Yeah. So all right. So yeah, like so of course. One sec, I got it already. All right. But yeah, like of course, like I said, of course, on April 9th, Bianca Belair turned 37. On April 10th, Paul Bear, of course, would have turned 72. April 10th, Q-Tip from a tribe called Quest turned 56. Of course, Harley Race would have turned 83. Dustin Rose, formerly known as Goldust, turned 57. On April 11th, of course, L. Duncan formerly from ESPN, turned 43. Of course, Lita turned 51, and of course, in terms of SummerSlam, on April 16th. So of course, April 16th, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar turned 79. Allison Seymour, of course, broadcasting legend, DC broadcasting legend, turned 60. Of course, Martin Lawrence, turned 61. John Havlicek would have turned 86. And so let me see what other birthdays. And so pretty much that is it. And you know what? As a matter of fact, I got other. Yeah, here they are. Of course, before I even, like I said, other birthdays I meant to add as well. April 13th, Rock and Roll Hall of Famer and legendary Al Green turned 80. Of course, on the same day, DeBrat turned 52. Of course, like I said, April 16th, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar turned 79. Alice Seymour turned 60. Martin Lawrence turns 61. Chance the Rapper turns 33. John Havlicek would have turned 86. And of course, April 17th, Roddy Piper would have turned 72. April 20th, Luther Vandross would have turned 75. And that is it for the birthdays. And before I go, I would like to give a word of wisdom. And is that when God sees that you consistently abide in his word, he will open your eyes so that you can see things that you've never seen before. And of course, the power of knowing God's truth leads to success, which is self-acceptance, being under authority, character responsibility, chains that are broken, knowing that everything belongs to God, and of course, go through suffering, but no matter how bad your suffering is, greater is he that is in you than he that is in the world. And of course, that leads to great success. When we put God first, he will make you successful. When we honor God's word, he will cause you to succeed. It's always, and of course, that's my word of wisdom. And always remember, the greater is he that is in you than he that is in the world. When you put God in first place, you don't have to worry about being in last place. Please make sure to listen to this podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or anywhere else that you download podcasts. I'm also on YouTube, youtube.com/Advon Resper Jr. Please make sure to like and subscribe for more great content. Thank you very much for those that watch on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. So thank you very much for supporting this episode. And always remember to let this day be the very best day of your life.